Nepal Tourism TV. Please like, share and subscribe to stay updated on tourism news in Nepal.
Namaste, this is Mahat. Today we have our distinguished guest from World Food Travel Association. He is the founder and executive director, Mr. Erik. Mr. Wolf, you're welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, wonderful. So you came here on the occasion of World Food Tourism Promotion and recently concluded Food Treks Kathmandu. So what is your analysis of Nepalese culinary tourism?
I think culinary tourism or food tourism in Nepal has tremendous potential. The country still has a lot to do to organize its resources and the stakeholders to get everyone pointing in the same direction. There is wonderful food here, there's wonderful drink, there is wonderful hospitality. Your people are some of the most gracious in the world. And there are also many wonderful spices that are very different to travelers from other countries. And also, of course, you have the natural beauty that you cannot be beat. So I think there's tremendous potential to work together with all of these people, these resources, bring it all together and package the food and beverage products as an attraction for visitors. I think that once the products are developed and marketed appropriately, once you have a roadmap in place or a strategy, I really think that you could have something very solid here.
Wow, that's wonderful. So it was a huge success, and I think it was a historical moment that we concluded yesterday. And every who is who from the industry took part. They were keynote speakers, some engaged in panel discussion, and they deliberated about the prospect of food tourism and its globalization. So you have visited many countries, also advocated about food tourism. What your association, World Food Travel Association, is particularly meant for? What it does?
We get that question a lot. So our mission is to protect and promote the awareness of food cultures through travel and hospitality.
Right.
And so we work with many tourism offices, tour operators, media professionals, and even academics to raise the awareness of the culinary cultures in the countries where we're visiting.
Okay, so far how many countries you have just visited yourself and just promoted this sort of thing like food treks in other countries?
Well, countries that I've visited, I've been fortunate enough to visit about 75 countries around the world, and so that's a lot. And in terms of where we've organized food treks events, we've done them in Spain, Greece, United Kingdom, Australia, here in Nepal, of course, and we'll be doing some of those same countries next year. We're also looking at Poland and Singapore for next year.
Wow. So this was a 3-day program, and could you tell me something about the activities that Nepal enjoyed and Nepal experienced out of these food treks?
Yeah, so the conference was just the one day, but before that, on the very first day, we did a food tour that was organized by Raj Gwayali. I hope I said his name, surname correctly. And he took us on a food tour around the city. We visited some historic venues, some of the old markets, some traditional Nepalese cuisine, and then we also tried some more modern Nepalese cuisine, and that was fantastic. So that was about 6 hours on the first day. And then the second day, there was a chef competition at the hub, and there were several chefs from Kathmandu around, and they were all preparing some interesting dishes, their take on Nepalese classics, and that also was about 4 hours, and that was a lot of fun. And then we rested up and convened the next morning for Food Treks Kathmandu.
Oh, that's great. So I have heard something about your particular activities like culinary tourist guide training. Yeah, you want to produce the tourist guide who are the real ambassador of any of the countries, and you are going to launch such sort of programs, like what it is, when Nepal can expect it.
Well, we already have launched the Culinary Certified Tourist Guide Training, and we prepared a program in cooperation with the European Federation of Tourist Guide Associations, and that program launched a few weeks ago, and we're currently in the process of rolling that out across Europe. We're also in discussion with other partners that would enable us to roll this out on a global scale. So I would say probably in a few months we hope to have an agreement in place and we could roll out the same program here in Nepal.
That sounds good and very interesting as well. So, what do you think would be the benefit out of this program, particularly certified tourist production or just registration process is there? How long does it go for, and what sort of benefits the local tour guide of Nepal can get?
Sure. The program is all done online. So there's an application process, there's an assessment, there's a couple videos and some tests. And it can all be done in about 3 or 4 hours, really. So it's not a huge time consumer. But the benefits are it gives the guide really the marketing authority. We've noticed around the world, and really the impetus for this whole program is that there are a lot of guides who maybe they've done some guiding before. They may even be very good at it, but they're not professional guides. And so our program is only available to professional tourist guides. So they have that basic level of training. We don't certify people on their ability to guide. We certify on their ability to know the culinary culture and apply that to guiding in their area. So normal guiding activities would be things like the ability to keep track of your guests on the tour, to not lose them, to know what to do in an emergency, to be able to handle personalities that might be challenging. Those are things that professional guides are taught in guide school. But instead, what we would do is certify Nepalese guides if they know something deep about the food culture. So whether it's Newari or Sherpa, that when people come here to Nepal, they're able to tell the stories about the spices and how things are different from eastern Nepal to western Nepal, and how we're in a valley here and what that means in terms of food cultivation and agriculture. So that's the kind of thing that we assess. And then if the guide is successful, then they get a diploma that they can display in their office, or they can put it on their website. They get a pin that they can put on their lapel or a bag, and then of course they get to use the designation in their own marketing materials. So it's quite prestigious.
Well, prestigious. And one thing, so after completion of that certification process, will that be valid inside territory, I mean Nepal or the national territory, or will that be global certification?
I wish it could be global certification. We certify the guides in the area in which they are already licensed. So you would have a professional guide association here in Nepal that authorizes people to operate in certain areas in Nepal, and our certification is much the same. So let's say that you came and said you're a professional guide.
I'm also one of the tourist guides.
Exactly. So you would then get the certification to do this in Nepal.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now let's come back to again the promotional campaign. Like food has a lot of prospect. We are rich in terms of food, right? Because of our multilingual, multicultural dimension, we are rich. So still, we could not promote globally. That is what we discussed yesterday as well. What do you think? Where in could we have lacked? What could be missing in terms of promotional campaign? What do you think?
Well, I think what I noticed yesterday in the meetings was that there are a lot of people that are already starting to do things. There's a lot of marketing tactics in play. And we see this a lot in destinations that are new to food tourism, where people, it's like throwing spaghetti on the wall and you see what sticks. And unfortunately, this is sometimes a symptom of people who maybe there's money to be spent, and people will organize this or put this up or do a website or something, and there's no context, there's no strategy. And I think the number one thing that's missing here is a strategy, so a roadmap for the country. And it's really what that strategy would do would be to let you know who you should market to, because food-loving travelers are very different from the trekkers that are coming to Nepal. Their likes and preferences are very different. Where they come from, their origins may be different from where the trekkers come from. The messaging will be completely different. The kinds of things that you need to position, and then also how things work together. So how the hotel and restaurant associations would be working with the tourism boards or the local local representatives of the tourism boards, how it all ties together really. And then most importantly, you have in place metrics. So when the strategy is published and all of the stakeholders know what the strategy is, you need to have metrics in place so you can see where your successes were, where you could have done better, and then ideally you would update your strategy every 2 to 3 to 4 years, and you take those learnings and fold them back into the next strategy. So maybe you had a marketing campaign that wasn't so great. Okay, you take that out, you fix it, you see what could have been better. I think that there are some exciting opportunities to be had with marketing, like with World Travel Market in London in November, but we have to have a context to put all of these things into.
Wow. So you just report to me that you do have a global connection. What you could do to uplift the present culinary tourism of Nepal? For example, you were just mentioning about WTM and other international forums. So what can you do, or what Nepal can expect on the part of World Food Tourism Association and its executive director?
Well, we can do a lot. We have tremendous connections all around the world. We have about 2,000 media professionals all around the world in our database, and they expect to hear from us about new and interesting stories. We have a strategic partnership with World Travel Market in London, and they're always asking us for new and interesting things to do. But again, we need some kind of a roadmap or a context to put this all in. It was said yesterday by a woman that she saw us running to the destination rather than what we should really be doing right now is walking. And she said, we're going too fast, things are happening too quickly, and she was very correct. But once we have a roadmap in place and we know who we should market to and what we should be saying, then the world is unlimited. I mean, we need to look at the markets that would be most sensible. I think there's tremendous opportunity in Europe. The United States, perhaps, although it's quite a distance. There's obviously tremendous opportunity in Asia. We would look where the food-loving travelers would be coming from: Singapore, Hong Kong, perhaps Australia as well. We'd have to do some research on that. But and what I'd also like to see is to do some psycho-culinary profiling for Nepal.
Okay.
This is a methodology that we developed back in 2010, and it basically looks at the behaviors of food lovers, and it looks at a destination and matches the destination's profile with the people's profile. So, for example, in northern Spain, they have a lot of Michelin star restaurants. But if you are not a Michelin star restaurant lover, if you don't like that fine dining and gourmet, maybe you're very new to the idea of good food, then you're not going to have a good time at those restaurants. And so when a tourist board promotes something to people that are not receptive, there's a disconnect. And that's what we want to prevent in the case of Nepal. We need to figure out what is Nepal's psycho-culinary profile, and once we know that, where the people live that have that same profile and how to attract them.
Okay. So we still need to do a lot. We need to work out. As you just said and referred to, we need to just analyze psycho-culinary profile, and also need to draft and just pave our one roadmap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that means we are not in a position to globalize our culinary tourism. We need to work out a lot domestically rather than thinking of global market.
Exactly, yes. You do have a lot to work out. We talked yesterday about the food tourism destination life cycle, and it's like a bell curve. So at the beginning is where things just start, and then at the top of the curve is where things are really going well. And Nepal is still towards the beginning part. You do have a lot to do, but there are things happening. There are people opening boutique hotels. You have a coffee exporter. There are people doing cooking lessons. There are people doing food tours. So the momentum is building, and it does take time. And I think to be patient is another lesson that we could learn. Let's say that we have a strategy in place in 4 months, and we're ready to go. Well, it's going to take time to see results.
It takes time, definitely.
Yeah, for example, they say when you create a new event, it takes 3 years for it to become successful. It's the same kind of thing. You need to allow that time. You plant the seed, you have to give time for the plant to grow.
Yeah, that's quite enlightening. And also, let us talk about globalization, because even if we do our activities from inland, it definitely gets affected with the global phenomena of tourism. we need to promote globally. What sector do you stress on?
It could go many ways. It also depends on who your target market is. So if you want to reach consumers, you would have different promotions.
Yeah.
Globalization, in my mind, makes it sound more like Nepal is going to take over the world. But so I think let's get the terminology right. So when people hear you talking about it, they know what to expect. Especially outside the country, if you tell people elsewhere that you're going to globalize, they might think, oh no, here we go. But yeah, so it really depends on the target market. It depends on the geographies as well. There are tools like trade shows, B2B travel marts where there's appointments. There are obviously the rich tools of social media. Pinterest is one that is often overlooked. We have to look at the generations as well. Are we targeting mostly millennials? Generation Z or Z is coming up very quickly, and they have very different values from the millennials. So we need to look where are the Generation Z people coming from, and how are their values different, and how do we need to market them? Thankfully, we have new research coming out this December, our Food Travel Monitor, that for the first time we're able to survey the Generation Z generation because they were too young before in our last survey, but now they're starting to reach the traveling age, and it should be very enlightening to see how they compare with millennials.
Yeah. Now let us talk about World Food Travel Association itself. So do you have a provision of granting membership to the association of the world who are relevant and related to tourism industry? For example, if the Association of Nepal approached you with a plea or request of membership, do you have such provision of granting membership, allied membership, or just active membership of your global association?
Well, the way that we do membership is, so we're an NGO as well, and we don't receive any public funds, unfortunately. So the only income that we receive is through the programs that we run, the research or education or training programs that we run, the membership that we charge for. So we don't have a situation where we grant memberships, but we are in the process of overhauling our community platform, and you can be expecting some very exciting developments in the next few months. So we'll be looking at individual memberships, we'll be looking at business and NGO memberships, as well as destination memberships. And we're not greedy. I mean, we just need a little bit from the different players to be able to validate the membership. I mean, it takes a lot of people to come together and build a pot of money that helps us to conduct our programs, that pays for trips to Nepal and pays for our trainers and pays for all the work that we do with the media and the work we do with places like World Travel Markets. So, yeah.
Now I would like to move on to our national tourism industry. So we have a vision of bringing in 2 million tourists by 2020.
Yes.
Now the range has just crossed just at around 1.2 million. So what do you think? Can food tourism just bring a different section of attraction for the global tourists in Nepal? What do you think the prospect of food tourism?
My comment may not make me very popular, but I think I would not aim for a goal of 2 million people because that's quantity. And I think really you should be looking for quality. So I would suggest that we look at higher quality tourism where you're maybe not looking at a number of 2 million people, but maybe the average visitor spend is higher. So maybe the average visitor spend, let's say, is $100 a day. Well, if we could get that up to $150 a day, but have no more tourists coming, then you're ahead. And that, I think, would be the goal. And I do think food tourism can get us there. Really, I think what you're looking at is the diversification of your tourism policy. Nepal has always been a place for outdoor recreation, trekkers, anything having to do with outdoor. That's your primary offering. And that's a tremendous opportunity for packaging with food tourism products as well. But I think you're at the point where you're ready to diversify your product portfolio and look at other things that might bring travelers here. And not just food. It could be other cultural things. It could be art. Obviously, Obviously, religious pilgrimage is another
Okay.
topic.
Yeah, but we need to just fusion it or synchronize it to other products as well, you know?
Yeah, the cross-promotional
Yeah,
activities.
cross-promotion.
Yeah.
Interestingly, so could you tell something about the global phenomena in food tourism? Because it could be very pertinent to mention about some of the countries who prioritize on culinary tourism, rose up from in terms of status in tourism. Can you name some of the countries who brought about great change in short span of time by focusing especially on culinary tourism?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of great examples around the world. One of the best is Ireland,
Ireland.
where they have put together a network of food ambassadors around the country. And these are people that could be bakers, cheesemakers, farmers, but people who represent their own specific area within Ireland. And they form a network. And then so you have the direction coming from the national board, the Felta Ireland organization, directing the development of tourism. And then you have the other people providing input. So it's both bottom up and top down. And another really great example is Canada, but Canada from the years about 2004 to 2010. Things changed. During the early 2000s, Canada had an active culinary tourism strategy, and they were actively encouraging the provinces to develop culinary tourism, and that strategy was working well.
Wow.
And then two things happened: the global financial crisis, and also they moved the tourism office, the tourism ministry, from Ottawa to Vancouver. All of the federal ministries are located in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. And then when they moved the tourism ministry, I don't know why they did it, but they lost a lot of their staff, about half of their staff, and it set them back several years. And only this year have they recently announced new tourism funding and culinary tourism being part of that. So they lost about 9 years by making that move. But the provinces bought into it. The provinces understand that food and drink are products worth promoting. So even while at the federal level in Canada things were very slow, at the provincial level things were happening. Some of the more active provinces were Ontario, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Alberta, and British Columbia to some extent. So things were still happening at the provincial levels.
Yeah, interesting.
And then you have other countries like Peru or Australia that have adopted a different approach, and their focus is purely on gourmet. And I find that very curious. A country like Peru, which is not a wealthy country, and they have, I think, maybe 3 Michelin star restaurants in Lima, but they're not big restaurants. And so when you promote the gourmet offerings of a country, you know, if a restaurant can seat 40 people, and you multiply that times, you know, 365 days, that's not a huge tourism impact. And really, the joy of what Peruvian cuisine is all about is getting out into the streets and meeting the local people and getting outside of the enormous capital of Lima. And really trying those everyday foods. That's the food culture that's worth celebrating. You know, you can get Michelin star cuisine anywhere in the world, and of course in Lima they're doing it with Peruvian ingredients. But I have to question destinations that go down the gourmet path, because I think that, well, I know that from our research, the people who are interested in gourmet is a minority. There's back to the cycle of culinary profiles. There's 13 of them, and gourmet ranks between number 8 and number 9 on the list. So it's at the bottom of the list. And it's, you know, if it works for them, fine, but it's not a strategy I would typically recommend.
Yeah. So you gave me references of the appointment of ambassadors for the promotion of some of the campaigns like culinary tourism, or it could be any other tourism, you know. So what sort of, you know, insightful decision or meaningful decision should be taken before announcing or selecting or choosing the ambassador for the success of such campaign?
Well, if you're looking for an ambassador to promote Nepalese cuisine, I think it needs to be someone who has experience both in Nepal and outside of Nepal.
Oh.
It's very important to understand the mindset of other countries when you are thinking about things to say about Nepalese cuisine. Oftentimes, people choose a chef to become a spokesperson or ambassador for the country. Someone who I think would be great would be our certified ambassador in Nepal, Suraj Pradhan.
Oh, wonderful. He did a commendable job. Yeah.
He is fantastic. Yeah, he has the experience of having lived in Australia. He is a chef. He is very articulate.
Yeah.
He can speak very well, and he speaks English very well. So
Yeah, that's
he would be able to be a very successful ambassador of Nepal and Nepalese cuisine outside of your country.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now we have come to the end of this show. At last, we thank you a lot. And do you have anything special to add on this interview?
I would say to keep the momentum going.
Yeah.
Many times when we have an event somewhere or I give a speech somewhere, everyone comes, listens, oh, that was fantastic, and then nothing happens.
Yeah,
and that is the risk that you run to not do something.
Yeah.
So you have this momentum. You had 100 people, at least, in the conference yesterday.
Yeah.
That's 100 people who are interested in this.
Yeah,
and next year, you'll double or triple that.
Yeah.
So there's something building here, and I would encourage you to work with the players, work with us to leverage that momentum and not to lose it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Namaste.
Namaste.
This is Nepal Tourism TV. Please like, share and subscribe to stay updated on tourism news in Nepal.